Don't bet silly, bet savvy. Join Coral's Bet and Get Club and get a free £5 bet every Sunday. The smart money's on Coral.
Hello and welcome to the Racing Post Cricket World Cup show. I'm James Milton. I'm joined by my Racing Post colleague Matthew Ireland, and from Coral, Simon Clare. This is the final show of the tournament, previewing the final, and England have made it through. Never in doubt, really, was it? They obviously had that bit of a wobble in the group stage, but they've come back firing, beating India and New Zealand in their last two group games, and then thrashing Australia. And Simon, I'll come to you first. I mean, just incredibly easy for England. They, the betting suggested it would be a tight game. Then England won the toss, and obviously their odds were eased a little bit, but it was very, very straightforward.
It was. The last time I think I sat in this chair was when England were facing the challenge of having to win the last two group games just to get through to the knockout stages. And I remember your colleague Liam, who can't be here today, obviously, but he actually suggested that was the time to back England at 9-2 if you believed they could do it. And I must admit, I, amongst many England fans, had grave doubts because at that stage they looked vulnerable. Roy obviously wasn't playing, but it wasn't just that. They just suddenly you sort of saw that sort of air of invincibility slightly shattered. But the way they've come back is huge testimony to them, to Owen Morgan, all the players really. They really created a bit of a siege mentality with that spat with Bairstow and Michael Vaughan, and obviously Roy coming back. There's no question the way he's performed looks like it's really helped them. And that all almost came to fruition in that game against Australia yesterday, where they were so dominant with the ball. And then you still had the worries then when they came out to bat. Was it going to be a tricky pitch? Although it hadn't looked like it was that hard to bat on. And then Roy and Bairstow were just utterly brilliant. And as you say, you saw with the New Zealand-India game, which we'll come to, you still felt there might be a little moments of ebb and flow, but there just wasn't one. That was so unlike a World Cup semi-final. And yes, from a punting point of view, I must admit, I actually backed Australia because I was lucky enough to get some tickets in the ballot to the final, where I'm taking my son. And I thought, well, Australia, New Zealand, much as I will still go and enjoy it. I thought, God, I want England there. So I thought, well, I'll hedge. I felt ashamed that I even bothered to hedge my position because England are there, and I can't wait for the final.
Yeah. I mean, it was really impressive. And Matt, it just looked like the England of old. The team had been so dominant in the build-up to the tournament. I thought, obviously Roy and Bairstow looked terrific, and the new ball bowlers were brilliant. But you also saw Adil Rashid back taking wickets and just full of confidence. He's had such a quiet tournament, but that bodes really well for England.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's such a confidence bowler as well, and to take those 3 big wickets in such a kind of environment will only do wonders for him on Sunday. Especially, I thought Woakes was absolutely brilliant. He's been brilliant the last 3 games. Yeah. With that new ball, he's, the white ball doesn't swing as much as it used to, but he's been getting that little bit of movement, which is, really troubling batsmen. I mean, he's been so tight as well. He got caught a little bit in his second spell against India at Edgbaston, but I think he bowled 3 maidens on the trot to start off with there. He went for 20 off 8 yesterday. And him and Archer really set the tone for what was a thoroughly dominant performance. I mean, if we'd have batted first, how many would we have got? I mean, it would have been about 400 if they'd.
Yeah, Woakes and Archer. We talk so much about Roy and Bairstow bring the best out of each other, but Woakes and Archer just look absolutely tailor-made for
a really nice complement each other really nicely. You got the raw pace of of Archer, and you just got that subtleties of Woakes. It's a bit like McGrath and Brett Lee, kind of that era. It all bodes very well for Sunday, I hope.
Yeah, it does. We're gonna talk more about the importance of those new ball bowlers, I'm sure, when we come to preview the final. But looking at those semi-finals, the power play overs, I think New Zealand got 27 for 1. India obviously were 5 for 3 and then 24 for 4 after 10 overs, and Australia in huge trouble early on as well. It just goes to show, they're 50 over matches, but exactly. You really can kind of win or lose a game inside those 10 power play overs. Yeah,
I think also, we sat here before the tournament and everyone was saying this is going to be the most high scoring World Cup of all time, and batsmen are just going to hold sway over everything. And you look at the top wicket takers at the tournament; they've all been fast bowlers. Yeah. The short balls really come into focus again. We've not seen as many bumpers as we've seen in this tournament probably in the last 10 years. They've really kind of taken a stranglehold by the tournament.
Apart from the West Indies.
Apart from the West Indies, who bowl on every single ball, yes.
No, you're quite right, and obviously, Mitchell Starc is not going to be in the final, but he's broken Glenn McGrath's record for most wickets in the tournament.
Yeah.
We talked about Wokes and Archer and Jasprit Bumrah and the New Zealand fast bowlers. Yeah, bowlers have been absolutely terrific in this tournament. Let's have a look back at the New Zealand-India game, which was another classic 2-day encounter, this one.
Yeah.
So good, they had to spread it out over 2 days.
It'll probably go down as the best 2-day international.
It was.
And possibly only 2-day international.
I'm not sure if that format's going to catch on, actually. We're kind of looking for 10 over
I thought it was quite
matches.
nice. It was like a mini test match. It was like one innings one day, one the next.
Yeah, and I don't think New Zealand will have been complaining about the way it panned out, because I thought that rain break really helped them, and they were able to kind of regroup, having looked on course for a really.
Well, I don't think India would have wanted to come out if the whole 20 over scenario, because it was gloomy under the floodlights, Bolt swinging it around. I don't think they would have been. I think they would have probably been more been the ones who wanted to play the next day rather than New Zealand, actually.
Yeah.
I think there's been a lot written about that, but I mean, if you look at the betting, I mean, when we went into the second day, New Zealand were 9-2, India were 1-7, and I don't think anyone at that stage would be predicting this actually has really helped New Zealand. In hindsight, it's easy to wonder, but I mean, I think fundamentally, and it comes back to the comments earlier. If the bowlers can get a couple of wickets early, and that hasn't happened with England the last 2 times, but it could have done in the last game when Roy was nearly bowled first ball, wasn't he? I mean, I know it's easy to sit there and relax, think, oh, we hammered Australia, but if if they'd happened to nick out Roy first ball, it puts pressure on Bairstow, the number 3 coming in. It's little moments like that, and the way they ripped out Kohli and Sharma early on set the whole team. They had to regroup, nearly pulled out of the fire with Jadeja and Dhoni. Do you know what I mean? I think sometimes you can almost overanalyze the dominance, but only a couple of moments can change a match at certain points in the game, and that's what happened. I think
wickets are always, wickets are vitally important in any kind of cricket. It slows down scoring, and I think it showed maybe not so well. Yeah, maybe it edged batting as well, but certainly at Old Trafford, that was a pitch where it was difficult to get into, slightly too paced. It wasn't easy to come out there and just start whacking the ball around unless your name's Ravi Jadeja, which I kind of foretold. I was talking to my friends on WhatsApp, and I said it's all set up for Jadeja, so I backed him to be man of the match, and he didn't even get it.
Oh, that's hard.
I must say, actually, David Stevens, who's been on the podcast, called me and he said, I think the odds are wrong. How are New Zealand only 2s on when India were 3 down after about 10 overs? And I sort of said, I sort of in my mind, I thought, from this position, I thought New Zealand should win 7 out of 10 maybe, and so, David Wentman was saying, he actually said, well, I think even at odds on, I'm going to have a bet, and he backed it. Of course, I actually was in a meeting then for a couple of hours, missed out on the dramas where presumably at some point it must have looked very likely India could pull out of the fire. I think that was quite nerve-wracking.
I think it was big. I went to put a bet on them actually, India, when they were about 10-1, I think, and then the next ball, I think Jadeja hit the ball out of the park, and they were into 6s, and I think they got as short as 9-4, I think.
Yeah, but it does go to show you need those early wickets. New Zealand took 4 of them in the first 10 overs, and India still, until that brilliant run out of Dhoni, they were still right in the game. I think, Dhoni hits a 6, 25 off 11 required with the utter legend MSD at the crease, and you just think they're still in it. And that run out from Guptill, who I tipped as top tournament run scorer. I don't think he's scored a run for about 5 weeks, but
he's got a run out.
He's still a hero, isn't he? Yeah. No.
They're an amazing side, New Zealand, aren't they? Because they sort of stuttered at the end of the group stage, just utterly reliant on Kane Williamson for nearly all their runs, practically, haven't they? And they're, and suddenly they find themselves in the World Cup final.
Again, him and Taylor stepped up, didn't they, at Old Trafford?
Yeah. I mean, we'll cover this in greater depth in the second half, but yeah, do you feel New Zealand were 11-1 at the start? They were still kind of around 8-1, 9-1 at the start. The semis, obviously having to beat India and then either England or Australia. I feel they've been a little bit fortunate. They had their group game rained off against India, so they got a point there. They lost their last 3 games when Pakistan were really beginning to fire and kind of got through on net run rate. But do you feel they've been a bit fortunate to reach this stage, Simon, or you can't take any?
You can't take too much away from them. I think you've outlined the fact that little things have gone in their favour. Certainly the point against India, but I think. The way they performed in the semi-final almost exonerates any fortune because they put up such a great performance against India, particularly bowling. But as you say, sort of Taylor came to the party to support Williamson, and it makes them very dangerous in the final because it's a total free roll. They didn't expect to be there. They've beaten India. They're playing the hosts, where there'll always be a degree of pressure on the hosts. They're the favourites. They're the underdogs, and so I think. yeah, I think you could look back and say maybe, Pakistan had it in their power as well. They can look back on points they threw away. So, no, but they've been, they say, even the fact they were 8-1 underdogs with 4 teams left in the semi-finals, not that much shorter than they were at the outset of the tournament. Says
almost like one of those tennis players who gets to the semis of a Grand Slam and is up against Djokovic.
Like Batista Agut, actually, in the current semi-finals. I mean, and the thing, of course, is that they've been almost largely, totally unbacked. I mean, they're complete skinner. There's been bits and bobs for them, but all the money was focused on the big 3, Australia, India and England. So, I mean, going into the final from a bookmaker's point of view, it really is a sort of a boom. I don't even say boom and bust. It's not a huge position on England, but it's certainly a big losing position on England and a big winning position on New Zealand. I don't see any reason why that's going to change much by
the India defeat would have been a good result for.
Oh yes, yes. It's been a great. I mean, it's a shame there was that little period where the weather kind of was a real pain, which was unfortunate. But actually, we endured that. But overall, it's been a cracking tournament. Some really
England made it exciting, didn't they, by losing them?
There
would have been so many dead rubbers had.
But even South Africa beating Australia. I mean, you just couldn't have. I mean, you couldn't have seen that happen. Not in the style of it as well. I mean, it really seemed to matter. And Australia, it was a great game.
I think after Sandpaper Gate, it did matter quite.
It wasn't going to be.
That's true.
It wasn't going to be a friendly, that one. Yeah,
it was a cracking game and a good result as well.
Well, there we go. We talked about New Zealand there. They're 5-2 to beat England in the final. We're going to have a short break, and then we're going to get stuck into that showdown at Lord's on Sunday.
Don't bet silly, bet savvy. Join Coral's Bet and Get Club and get a free £5 bet every Sunday. The smart money's on Coral.
Hi, welcome back to the Racing Post Cricket World Cup show. We are previewing the Cricket World Cup final between England and New Zealand at Lord's. I'm James Milton. I've got my Racing Post colleague Matthew Ireland alongside me and Coral's Simon Clare. And we're now going to get stuck into this final. England heavy favourites after that impressive semi-final win over Australia. And Simon, how are Coral betting on this match?
Yeah, I mean, they are the heavy favourites. 1-3 England, 5-2 New Zealand. I think even in part the fact that we will have liabilities on England and nothing on New Zealand, it means it's easier to make New Zealand even a bigger price than maybe they might have been. Plus, England dealt with them quite comfortably in the group stages. But we know it's a final. Is 3's on too short? Are we being over-patriotic in the way we're pricing England?
It's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, obviously, as you say, England went off 2-1 favourites for the tournament. They're well backed into that price, and New Zealand were 11-1. Home advantage. I don't know. This England side, they've obviously done brilliantly to win these last 3 games as they needed to. You worry about them a little bit under pressure, and we saw what New Zealand did right at the start of that India innings, and they are capable of it. Matt, can you make a case for the Kiwis?
I can, yeah. I don't think they'll win, but I definitely can make. I think what gives them the best chance is the venue.
Yeah.
Lord's, normally swings around, which brings Bolt into the game. Matt Henry bowled beautifully at Old Trafford, and then they've got like the X factor of Lockie Ferguson. You never know what he's going to do. The bowlers give them a chance, definitely. Yeah. I'd be slightly worried about their batting. Yeah. As we've kind of mentioned, Williamson and Ross Taylor have basically underpinned their whole tournament. Yeah. I think there was a stat in the England game when they played them at Riverside. Something like Williamson was responsible for something like 48% of all their runs this tournament, which is just a phenomenal stat. So, and again, in this India semi-final, they were the only 2 who really put together an innings, thought about the situation, and got them to a competitive total as it was. So that's the negative about New Zealand, and I think England will know that if they can get Williamson and Taylor, even for a combined 80, something like that, there's plenty of avenues for them to exploit.
You just feel that New Zealand's best chance is in a kind of gritty, low-scoring game. If it's a 350 pitch, you'd think England are going to overpower them.
I have to say, I thought Williamson's captaincy was really good against India, because they were kind of in a similar position as they were against Australia at Lord's, when they had Australia in a lot of trouble, and they just took their kind of the foot off the throat, whereas they really, they sensed blood at Old Trafford, India, and they brought back Ferguson, brought back Bolt, and really tried to go for it. Another little bit about New Zealand is their 5th bowler's quite weak.
Yeah.
You can see Roy, but if they get in and they're still there, you can see Roy Bairstow, Stokes, Morgan going after Jimmy Neesham and Colin de Gronholm. they've got to get 10 overs
that
out of them.
That was the gamble for Williamson, wasn't it, in the India game?
You can see he left.
Ended up bowling the 50th over.
Yeah, he left until the game was pretty much safe to risk it.
Thankfully for them, they'd run out Dhoni in the previous over.
Yeah.
Otherwise it could have been quite messy, I think. But so we're looking at New Zealand having a chance because of these bowlers who have been outstanding throughout, really. And there's one, as you mentioned, Williamson and Taylor. There's one Coral special that caught my eye. It was 7-4. Those two to score 100 plus runs. I think if you fancy New Zealand, I think that's a cracking bet to get on, because it's hard to see how they win the game without those two going well. Matt's mentioned that, I thought they assessed conditions so well in that semi-final. You're kind of watching it going, scoring at kind of 3.5 and over. What are they doing here? And ended up getting 60 and 70 or whatever, and it was just enough. But Simon, what are the top run scorer prices for?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to talk about New Zealand and almost the difference between England and New Zealand. In New Zealand's top run scorer market, Williamson dominant favourite 2-1. I mean, no surprise for all the reasons outlined. He scored most of their runs still this tournament. Taylor 7-2 second favourite, signs of a return to form, and he's got the experience and the form, the record. If he can step up in a final and play a big innings, that'd be massive for New Zealand. 4-1 Guptill, who's struggled. 5-1 Munro, 8-1 Blundell. It really, the betting just totally polarises on Williamson and Taylor. Then you look at the England top run scorer, and despite even the fact that Roy and Bairstow look brilliant, they're still only slightly shorter than some of the others. So it's 11-4 Roy, 3-1 Root, 3-1 Bairstow, 6-1 Morgan, 8-1 Stokes, and it's so slightly more depth to the betting market, which reflects the depth in the England batting order, I think. Yeah,
I think that Stokes price is going to tempt me again, even though you're kind of wary of backing him, because he obviously didn't get a bat in the semi-final, but he's looked in such good touch whenever England have been in trouble. He's come in, and obviously the Australia game at Lords he batted brilliantly, and then was undone by that fantastic Mitchell Starc Yorker. So 8-1 Stokes, and we've mentioned the new ball threat from New Zealand. Matt, do you think New Zealand can get amongst that England?
Yeah, I do. I would be backing Root in that market, because I think I can see Bolt nipping out one of Root and Bairstow. If they have got a weakness, and they've shown, there was the trial by spin at the start of the tournament, but I think that left arm option is very potent, especially at Lords, and they will be facing New Zealand's best bowler in Bolt.
Left armers at Lords have been phenomenal in this tournament. Stark and Behrendorff took 9 wickets against England, I think.
Bolt got a hat-trick against Aussies.
Afridi and Amir, I think, caused problems for Pakistan.
Yeah, I think. Root, and then another plus for Stokes, that is because he is a left-hander. New Zealand's right-handers don't really swing the ball, right-armers, sorry. So Henry and Ferguson definitely doesn't. He's kind of just all about pace and power. So that's in his favour definitely if he gets a bat. But yeah, Root would be I thought he looked pretty good yesterday. He's been in fantastic touch all tournament, to be honest with you. He's got 200s, hasn't he? And he likes batting against the New Zealanders.
Yeah, I mean, New Zealand in that semi-final got rid of Sharma, Rahul and Kohli for 1 run each. I mean, England fans will be hoping we don't have a repeat with Roy, Bairstow and Root. We could be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, especially against kind of the amount of left-handers England have in their side, can be seen as a bit of a negative, especially against spin. But I think this is a bit of a positive in the top order. So in terms of negating Bolt basically, it is, and maybe Santner as well. So actually Santner bowled very well against India.
Yeah,
doesn't really turn it that much, but he's pretty accurate. He got Rishabh Pant with probably just guile, really, bowling the same spot 4 balls in a row. So I think England will kind of resist that temptation to really go after him.
Yeah. And looking at the bowlers, some fantastic bowlers on show, as we've mentioned, Simon. What's the top wicket taker betting for these two teams?
Well, Trent Boult is marginally favoured at 11-4 ahead of Ferguson at 3s. Then 7-2 Matt Henry is obviously devastating against the Indians. 4-1 Santner, 4-1 Southey, 5-1 Neesham. So that's sort of the way the betting's framed, which sort of shows you the depth that they have got on the bowling.
Yeah, they've been a proper unit actually.
Yeah, the bowling's really good.
I mean, Boult started out struggling for wickets, and the other guys were chipping in, but I just think Boult seems to have improved as the tournament's gone on and in these big games. And as you mentioned, 4 wickets against Australia, including a hat-trick.
If any
at
English
Lords.
ground was made for Trent Bolt, it's Lords.
Yeah. No, he is a fantastic operator. And how about the England bowling, Simon?
And England similar, again, a great bowling unit. 11-4, Archer just favourite header Wokes, 3-1. Then we've got 7-2 Mark Wood, 4-1 Adil Rashid, obviously picked up those 3 against India, 9-2 Plunkett and 6-1 Stokes. And
Yeah.
in fact, they haven't really had to rely too much on Stokes at all. It shows you how well all those bowlers have been performing, really. They've been able to use the right balance of the top 5.
And there's some 10-11 Chris Wokes to take 2 or more wickets, which caught my eye as well. I just think, Matt's mentioned it earlier, he's just been outstanding with the new ball. Obviously 3 wickets in the semi-final, and just keeping things so tight and the pressure is on, and then he comes back later in the innings and can hopefully pick up some cheap wickets as well. So I think he was man of the match in a Lord's Test a couple of years ago, so he's got a good record there. So that would be another one to consider. Matt, any other specials that you like the look of?
Wokes was my kind of bet, man of the match, top wicket taker, everything.
16-1 man of the match.
Yeah, I mean, he probably, I know obviously we talked about England's top order, but he might get a bat, he can bat.
Yeah.
He test match 100 at Lords, as he said. I just fancy him to have a really big game. If we said about the Lords suiting Bolt, it'll definitely suit Wokes as well.
Yeah,
and he's just been, the last 3 games, he's probably been the best bowler in the tournament.
Yeah.
So man, you fancy man of the match, James? Quite a good mark that, isn't it? Because you're almost back. It's like a player performance bet, really.
Yeah,
you have to be the best.
It's definitely it's definitely where we're getting with England as well, because obviously a lot of their players will be towards the head of the market, and if you fancy Roy.
Yeah.
If you fancy England and Roy to absolutely, go guns blazing again, it's not a bad way to get with England.
Yeah, I think you'd rather back Roy for man of the match.
6-1.
Yeah,
he's a favourite actually. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that you're not only looking at his stats, you're looking at the way he plays as well. If he comes off, it's going to be spectacular.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I don't know. Funny if you probably know. I imagine batsmen probably have always favoured slightly man of the match because it's more visually dominant.
Yeah.
Picks up 3 bowls,
Yeah, you see the scorecard, don't you?
Yeah, it is. I think that's.
Yeah.
It's always seen as harder to get. It is harder to get 3 wickets than it is to get 50, but 50 seems to be kind of elevated as a higher magnitude. But that one about Roy, that 6 he played off Mitchell's start was possibly one of the greatest shots I've ever seen. Just the way his wrists snapped back and
absolutely.
92 miles an hour. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
It was,
and even Steve Smith couldn't trouble him.
No, he got nutmegged as well, which was.
Yes, it was. It was an unfortunate day for Steve Smith in the end. He batted very well, but I think that 1 over went for 21. Didn't it? That was
the final 6 was 102 metres.
Onto
the top of Edgbaston.
I think when Steve Smith made his debut, he was the latest.
He was,
the
he
next
was.
Shane Warnes, Australia have gone through, but the leg spin's sadly fallen by the wayside a little bit. I'm going to come on now and ask for your best bets for the final. Simon, I'll start with you.
I thought total sixes over 9 and over. I thought 8-11. I thought it could be. I think there's some big hitters. I'd like to think the Lords might play to a slightly bigger scoring game. I mean, I don't know what but up to the 300 mark, which I think will. And I thought Roy over 39 runs or over 5 to 6. I think he's in great form. I think he's done it probably in the last 3 matches. I thought nothing, not flashy prices, but those would be 2 of the markets I'd probably pick on.
Matt?
Mine would be Chris Wokes, top wicket taker, just in the game.
Fantastic. Well, I'd actually looking at this is one of those tips that could make me look very silly. Owen Morgan not to hit a 6 at 6-5. I just thought was a bit big. Now, he did hit 17 against Afghanistan. We all remember that, but he hasn't hit one in 5 subsequent innings. So, that included a couple of 40s against New Zealand and Australia. So, if Roy and Bairstow go ballistic in a small chase as they did yesterday, then he might not get to bat too long. So I'll probably look very foolish.
Well, they might also he might push Butler up the order. Yeah. So he might only come in for a few.
Might get a duck.
Exactly. I'm feeling more confident now.
Oh, poor Owen Morgan.
Going to double my stakes.
To have a bad knock.
So there we go. We've covered plenty of specials there for this final between England and New Zealand. England in their first World Cup final since 1992. 1-3 to do it. England expects, but we shall see on Sunday. Thanks for following us on the Cricket World Cup show throughout this tournament. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you backed some winners, and follow the Racing Post for the big match preview in Sunday's paper.
Don't bet silly, bet savvy. Join Coral's Bet and Get Club and get a free £5 bet every Sunday. The smart money's on Coral.